The sentence recently spoken by Jungkook has shaken the entire foundation of ARMY's trust in BTS's internal relationship and HYBE's role behind the scenes. "I can't stay silent anymore about V and HYBE." This statement, though not aired directly in mainstream media, spread like wildfire through video clips, audio snippets, and narratives across platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. The question now is, did Jungkook truly imply disappointment over HYBE's treatment of Kim Taehyung? And if so, how deep is the wound that has been inflicted? From the beginning, the relationship between V and Jungkook has been one of the most prominent aspects of BTS's dynamic. Their closeness, on-stage chemistry, and togetherness behind the scenes have shaped public perception of a genuine and solid bond. However, in recent months, the public has detected unusual changes. V's absence in various promotional activities attended by Jungkook, the disappearance of their interactions on camera, and emotional signals displayed separately by each of them. Is this merely a coincidence? Or is there a systematic pattern deliberately constructed? Several fanbase observers have gathered data from social media activity, public appearances, and artist schedule distribution showing that V is slowly being distanced from BTS's mainstream promotions and member interactions, especially with Jungkook. In this atmosphere, Jungkook's statement becomes highly significant and nearly irrefutable. He is sending a serious warning signal. What is even more astonishing is the context behind Jungkook's statement. In an audio clip allegedly from a private session with staff, a voice resembling Jungkook's is heard uttering emotionally charged words, "I've held this in too long. If no one wants to speak, then I will." That sentence has been interpreted by many fans as an expression of frustration over what V has experienced. But how credible is the source? And can social media be the sole benchmark for truth? We must acknowledge that the internal dynamics of a large group like BTS cannot always be accessed transparently by the public. Yet, the treatment patterns toward V, now perceived as odd by ARMY, are not something that can be easily ignored. V's absence from certain global projects, the limited promotions he receives, and the differences in treatment compared to other members have now become serious topics of discussion in online communities. Is this a management maneuver to shift focus to certain members? Or further, is this a form of intentional separation? Those questions are not only worth asking, they demand answers. Could HYBE be undergoing an image restructuring, in which V is no longer part of the main narrative? And if that's the case, what is the fate of the personal relationship between V and Jungkook? Is Jungkook now the only voice brave enough to speak out against the injustice felt by his fellow member? Of course, we cannot fully rely on viral video snippets or netizen interpretations as absolute evidence. However, public perception often fuels change, and if enough fans recognize an anomaly, public pressure could force the relevant parties to issue clarification. Unfortunately, so far, all we've received is silence. A silence too deep to ignore, and one that only reinforces suspicion. As time passes, more and more content shows Jungkook's gestures, expressions, and words that seem emotional when speaking about things he can't control and that are too painful to ignore. Some even quote Jungkook stating he is no longer afraid of losing his position as long as the truth is told. That is no random remark. Such words indicate an extraordinary internal conflict and the courage to stand against a system perceived as unjust. But let's be critical. Could all this merely be a game of perception? A narrative deliberately created by a third party to spark drama and boost engagement? If so, who stands to gain the most from this conflict? Will HYBE, with all its power, continue to remain silent as this rumor grows without clarification? Or is their silence a strategy to obscure attention? Now, the hot ball is in the public's hands. Do you, as a fan, believe Jungkook is genuinely sending a distress signal? Or do you believe this is merely the distorted effect of digital virality? We are faced with two extreme possibilities. One, that this is a real sign of internal tension long hidden beneath BTS's grandeur. Or two, that this is a fabricated narrative to maintain relevance amid fierce competition in the global entertainment industry. Whatever the answer, we cannot turn a blind eye to the symptoms emerging. When an artist of Jungkook's caliber begins to say, "I can't stay silent anymore," it means something very serious is happening. That sentence is an SOS signal, not just to fans, but to all those who have long controlled the narrative behind the scenes. IT is now time for the public, especially ARMY, to take on a more critical role. Don't merely be consumers of information, but become filters, observers, and enforcers of transparency. Do not let loyalty blind logic. Do you truly believe the relationship between V and Jungkook weakened for personal reasons? Or do you feel there's interference from a larger structure? We acknowledge that much of this information originates from platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Therefore, we do not advise you to accept everything at face value. On the contrary, we urge you to question every snippet of information you encounter. Trace its origin, analyze its content, and ask, is this fact or hoax? Is this a sincere expression or merely a scenario for sensation? We can no longer pretend that nothing has changed. We cannot continue viewing BTS as a whole unit without acknowledging internal shifts in relationships. And if there is indeed a systematic effort to separate V and Jungkook, then the question is, who made that decision, and for what purpose? Whatever the case, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. Jungkook no longer wants to remain silent. And when someone like Jungkook starts to speak, the world must listen. Not to create drama, but to seek the truth that has long been buried in silence. Jungkook's sharp remarks and unusual body language in his recent interview have ignited a new wave of questions among fans and observers of the Korean music industry. Why did Jungkook choose to speak now? What is really happening behind HYBE's stage? Do his words contain hidden hints about long-buried internal conflict? The facts long overlooked are now slowly surfacing, and the public is being forced to reevaluate the official narrative constructed by the agency. Jungkook's emotional statement not only shakes the foundation of trust between fans and management, but also opens the possibility that there's been an unhealthy dynamic long concealed. Jungkook did not mention names directly, but every pause and tone in his speech seems to guide us to one point: the complicated relationship between him, Taehyung, and HYBE. The statement, "I can't stay silent anymore," is not just an expression of frustration. It's an alarm signal from a member of the world's biggest group who may feel he has lost control over the narrative of his own life. Are we witnessing the beginning of a major fracture within BTS? Or is this merely a sophisticated communication strategy to sway public opinion? This question becomes relevant considering how media narratives are formed in today's post-truth era. A TikTok video under 1 minute, a podcast snippet without context, or an unverified DM screenshot can become viral fuel, blurring the line between reality and fiction. If that's the case, could Jungkook's statement also be part of such a scenario? Yet many believe Jungkook's expression is entirely authentic and rooted in long-suppressed internal tension. Many fans have observed how Jungkook and Taehyung's individual promotion schedules have recently become increasingly separate. Even when their solo activities occur in the same area or country, no moment of togetherness is seen publicly. Why do two friends who were once so close now appear to have no contact at all? Is this merely a marketing strategy? Or is there intervention by the agency to systematically separate them? Meanwhile, most reactions on Twitter and YouTube show deep anger toward HYBE. Comments like, "HYBE meddles too much in members' personal relationships," and "they ruined Taekook's chemistry for profit," reflect public anxiety. However, on the other hand, a group has emerged with a more skeptical stance. Is this really a unilateral decision by management? Or is there a personal dynamic we don't know? Has the public gone too far interfering in internal matters that might be more complex than they appear? It should be noted that to this day, there has been no official statement from any involved party regarding the truth behind Jungkook and Taehyung's separation. Still, small fragments from social media continue to strengthen the suspicion that this conflict is real. Some fans have even compared Taehyung's facial expressions when asked about Jungkook to his expressions when discussing work pressure. Are we drawing conclusions too far from micro-expressions like that? Or is the collective intuition of fans more accurate than the official narrative? We must also consider the possibility that all this is part of a perception game designed to create sensation. The history of the Korean entertainment industry is filled with scenarios deliberately leaked to build buzz, raise expectations, then destroy them for a bigger plot twist. Are we now falling victim to such manipulation? If so, who profits from this chaos? Amid all this speculation, a fundamental question must be asked. Why is Jungkook speaking now? Why did he choose such open, emotional, and multi-layered phrases? Is he indirectly challenging HYBE's power, or merely expressing his longing for a bond that's now severed? More importantly, does the public have the right to demand an explanation for a personal conflict of an artist, simply because they live under the spotlight? It is important to remember that all the information currently circulating, whether through Twitter, TikTok, or YouTube, does not necessarily reflect a complete reality. Much of this content is subjective, edited, even manipulated to shape certain opinions. In such situations, vigilance and skepticism are our only protection against the trap of systematically spread hoaxes. We encourage readers to reflect. Does all this reflect the actual truth? Or is it just a series of fabricated narratives designed to control public emotion and manipulate mass attention? Are we becoming part of a larger social experiment, where the line between fact and fiction becomes increasingly blurred every day? Jungkook has said he can't stay silent anymore. But are we truly hearing what he meant? Or are we only hearing what we want to believe? Here lies the urgency of critical reflection from every individual following this issue. Don't let emotion alone guide our perception without solid facts. In a world where sensation spreads faster than clarification, only skepticism and reason can lead us toward a fuller understanding. As a final note, we again remind you that all the information in this article comes from content circulating on social media, whose truth has not yet been fully confirmed. Therefore, we invite readers to remain critical, dig deeper, and not immediately believe every viral narrative snippet. Because in this world full of illusions, what appears real is not always true, and what seems like a lie might hold a truth yet to be revealed.